No problem. Everyone hearing us okay? Yeah, great. Thank you very much for the introduction. We're aware that MMN has supported Chitokoloki Mission Hospital for a long time. Some of you will be familiar with the work, but we will give an overview of it and describe our experience over a few months earlier this year, where we had the privilege to serve. So I'm Stuart, obviously I'm a general surgeon. Jess is a GP, and we travelled from Scotland to Zambia in the southern part of Central Africa. Zambia is a country of 19 million people, most of whom live in the cities and towns actually in Zambia. Much of Zambia is very sparsely populated, and particularly so the area where Chitokoloki Mission Hospital is. Northwestern Province is an area 1.5 times that of Scotland, with a population of 700,000, and most of that population would be in the urban centres. So Chitokoloki is very rural, by the Zambezi River, in a very beautiful elevated spot, and really quite underdeveloped. We were very fortunate in the hospital in having near 24/7 electricity. The vast majority of people around us would not have that privilege. Roads were basic. It was difficult to access good quality education. It was the sort of place that most people would move out of if they were ambitious. Chitokoloki is regarded as a first level hospital, so a smaller district general, with 180 beds, of which half are acute, 500 kilometers from the major city in the province, and run by CMML, the umbrella organization of Brethren projects in Zambia. It's quite involved actually in the Church Hospitals Association of Zambia. Church hospitals in Zambia provide about 1/3 of formal healthcare, and in the rural areas, they provide about 50% of healthcare. So so-called faith-based healthcare remains very important in the country of Zambia. Chitokoloki celebrated its centenary in 2014, and much of the 100 years it's been in existence, it's had medical work. We travelled there in the hospital's plane, took us 2.5 hours, and this is us making our approach to land, with the kilometre square of the mission station evident there. The mission has clearly an airfield, many staff houses, a large maintenance area. We joined the small medical team who supervised the hospital. I was able to focus largely on surgery. I did, I think, 250 odd procedures over the 5 months that I was there. About half of them would be general surgery, which is what I'm officially trained in, and about half of the procedures were in every other kind of surgical discipline there is, and that was a pretty fascinating mix for me. Jess particularly focused on general medicine and pediatrics, and we were hugely impressed with the team that we worked alongside.
As a result, we therefore decided that the best way to give you a bit of a flavour as to what is going on at CHIT at the moment is just to introduce you to some of the main players at the moment, and the wider team as well, and then we'll have a few kind of cases that help us illustrate a few points that we would like you to pray for. So this handsome chap in the armchair is David Mcadam. Some of you might be familiar with David. He's the medical superintendent at CHIT, and has been for near on 20 years now. He's a surgeon, but does every sort of surgery you can imagine, has a particular liking for eye surgery, supervises pretty much everything that goes on in the hospital, particularly including tea break. It's a very important role that he holds there. Yeah, this is the theatre setup where David is mostly found, in the corner chair that you can see that's very well worn. This is Julie Rachel J.R. Elwood, who has been at CHIT for about 12 years full time now. She is a nurse midwife who is incredibly driven by her love of God and by her strong sense of calling and passion to do absolutely everything to the best of her ability. She creates a real tone within the hospital amongst the staff and feeling that we are there to do our absolute best. She holds all of these titles that you see written on the slide, formally or informally, and basically is the driving force behind pretty much everything that happens in the hospital. This is someone that we've come to know and love very well as during our time there. This is Mr. Mambo, who's a medical licentiate, which is essentially a physician's assistant sort of grade, who's trained to do most kind of basic medical medicine, pediatrics and obstetrics and some surgical procedures. But Mr. Mambo has a real talent for obstetrics and gynecology and taught us a lot while we were there. Is very good at ultrasound and is just a real gem that the hospital is grateful for and really does value.
He would be one of about 50 government paid staff that, as we said, we were really on the whole very impressed with how hardworking and capable they were.
This is Mambo and Stuart doing a procedure. It's always hard to tell which one is teaching which one, because probably about half the time Stuart was able to show Mambo some clever ways of doing things, and about half the time Mambo was keeping Stuart right, mainly with regard to obstetrics. We thought we would just share this verse with you to have in mind as we think through the work at CHIT. It's something that you feel very clearly in the work ethos there, that there is real value in each and every person, that they all hold their role and are necessary. This lovely bunch are the kind of backbone of the whole situation. Chitokoloki Mission Hospital, as we said, has been going on a long time, and part of the reason for its longevity and its real success is the administration, the logistics, the maintenance that goes on behind the scenes. Many of you who are familiar with mission hospitals will know that the doctors are definitely not the most important people. So Mr. Hanner up in the top left-hand corner is the administrative boss, and all of these the rest of the maintenance and logistics team are seen here, as well as some of the nursing staff, and they really keep the whole show on the road in an absolutely spectacular way that makes CHIT really stand out from other mission hospitals.
I would say that the service we received, if anything went wrong, was very much on a par, if not better.
Much better than the NHS.
What we would get in the NHS. If a light popped, someone would be there within an hour, which is just amazing.
Yeah. The other thing that is very evident working in the hospital is that you don't necessarily have to have had formal training to be an absolutely indispensable part of this body. These two characters in front of you are Kayembo and Jack, who are not formally trained as nurses, used to be garden boys for various missionaries, and have worked their way up being domestics within the hospital, and now both work in theatre, keeping the show on the road, and are absolutely indispensable, as this verse underpins.
I think one of the advantages of Chitokoloki, of having a stable backbone of very capable missionary staff, is that it is a very attractive place for visiting specialists to come. Things are well organized. It's a well-oiled machine. And the gentleman in the top left there is Dr. Goran Jovic, who is a plastic surgeon, for many years the best plastic surgeon in Zambia. And he also pointed out the worst plastic surgeon in Zambia. He was the only one. And he'd made a point of coming to Chitokoloki, where he particularly enjoys doing cleft lip and palate surgery. There are a number of Zambian doctors based in Lusaka who travel, but again, a particular strength of Chitokoloki has been huge numbers of volunteers, medical and non-medical, over the years. They make a massive contribution to driving up standards and keeping the hospital ambitious. The hospital actually serves an immediate population of only about 20,000 people, but at least 2/3 of its workload come from beyond that area, because it has been a beacon of high standards for a very long time. And so has become, although officially a first level hospital, it really acts as a referral centre. And it means that there's a particularly fascinating and challenging range of diseases. Here's an example of one young lady who was hugely helped by a visiting American Christian oral maxillofacial surgeon. Had a huge tumor growing in her jaw for many years, unable to get help. We were able to provide the services that enabled Dr. Tim Montgomery and his wife to come and remove this tumor, and gave this woman a huge new lease of life. She came to the hospital wrapped in a shawl, keen to avoid people, clearly very dispirited. And we not only fixed this tumor, but she had sadly a vesicovaginal fistula, which was a childbirth injury. She had a connection between the bladder and the vagina, constantly leaking urine. Dr. Mcadam was able to fix that. So we certainly have made an enormous difference physically to her, and we hope also witness to the love of Christ in doing so.
It's a real shame that you can't see her eyes in that second photo, because they're absolutely bright and lit up in a way that they weren't when she first arrived.
You might be interested to know that Medical Missionary News featured Chitokoloki in some correspondence from 1952. I'll just read it. Not only is our little hospital a place where Christ is made known, but also a place of comfort for believers, who, if we were not here, would be tempted in time of sickness to go to the native medicine man. It is thus our joy and privilege to be a help at such times. Well, it's interesting to know that actually not too much has changed. This picture illustrates a rabid dog, a dog that is carrying a rabies virus. And there was a dog that went mad in a nearby town, Chitokoloki, during the time we were there, bit a number of children who all made their way to Chitokoloki, and we were able to inoculate them with rabies vaccine. Very sadly, 2 or 3 weeks after this happened, a young child came, brought by his uncle. This child had also been bitten by one of these dogs, and his family had made the decision that they weren't trusting this Western medicine nonsense. They instead made a trip to the witch doctor, to a traditional healer. And this poor boy, I think he was 8 years old, came in anxious, and when someone went to turn on the tap in the room, he absolutely panicked. He had the classic hydrophobia, fear of water, that is a harbinger of rabies. And over a number of days, he got worse and worse, and we knew there was absolutely nothing we could do. He died of rabies some days later, a tragedy that could well have been averted, and was impacted by false beliefs. It was striking that there were a number of crocodile attacks during the time we were at Chitokoloki, and we heard from many sources that local people continued to believe that these attacks were not really from natural crocodiles, but from people who had, by witchcraft, turned themselves into a crocodile in order to exact revenge on people. And therefore, the question in many people's minds was not, why did this crocodile attack happen? It was, who was that person who used witchcraft to turn into a crocodile? And it was quite striking just how deep and dark some of these traditional beliefs continue to be, and therefore how important the spiritual witness of the hospital continues to be.
We thought we'd tell you one happy story amongst all of this. This is a young mum and her little baby Albert. Fantastic naming going on, as often the way in Zambia. This mum is a very special lady. She came to the hospital to deliver and delivered baby Albert actually the second day that we were working there. This mum has suffered 4 previous pregnancy losses, having delivered her babies early at home, and essentially they had died of prematurity at home. She delivered this baby in hospital, who did need help. He was unwell when he was first born and needed a lot of help and support in the first month of his life. But this is them on going home day. You'll see he's still very tiny in very clothes that are much too big for him, a tiny hat that's much too big for him. But this was the first baby that this mum had ever taken home. And again, just showing the need for medical service in this particular part of the world, and the hope that medical service can provide.
I thought I would share one surgical case with you. Dr. Mcadam presented this young girl, 6 years old, on one of her first ward rounds, and told me that we were going to tackle this next week, and I couldn't quite get my head around how we might help this poor young girl whose abdomen had been completely taken over by an enormous tumor. We didn't have the luxury of knowing the pathology of the tumor. We couldn't put her through a CT scanner, but we had an ultrasound machine, and that suggested a tumor of her kidney. The next picture, if anyone is squeamish, you might wish to
so just avert your eyes. We'll
gaze.
Tell you when to come back.
So this is us intraoperatively. We spent 5.5 hours trying to find our way around this tumor. We lost just under 1 litre of blood, but this girl survived the operation, which happened at the beginning of our stay in February. And Jess spent the next many months, those of a queasy disposition can now look again. Jess spent the next several months giving her chemotherapy. There's very few hospitals in Zambia, I have to say, that would be able to access chemotherapy. And we hope that this lovely little girl will go on to live a long, natural life, having had successful surgery. She put on so much weight post-op, feeling so much better. Her mum started to worry she had another tumor.
But no, it was just her tummy getting fat. This is one of the little girls that we've just described, and another little one who we also were privileged to be able to give chemotherapy for a Burkitt's lymphoma, who both were discharged the week before we left, and just I think their smiles say it all. We hope that these 2 girls will go on to do really good things in the future, having been given an opportunity for that. So we hope that gives you a helpful overview as to the sorts of things that are going on at Chitokoloki. It's a very special place with very many special people. And I think as we turn to prayer, they are who are on our hearts and our minds. We would love you to be praying for the staff, for them to have energy and strength to keep going in all the busyness, all the demands on their time, on their efforts, for good relationships amongst the missionaries and amongst the hospital team, for continued passion amongst the wider hospital team to really work hard and provide a really good quality service. We'd love you to pray for the future of the hospital. This is a hospital that has seen many seasons and many different personnel over the nearly 100 years that it's been functioning as a hospital. And there are new Zambian families that have joined the team. The Chibwe family is one, medical doctor and his wife, a teacher, who are new to the area and keen to work as local Zambian missionaries in the long term. We'd love you to be praying for them to settle and to really feel part of the team, and for freedom for visiting specialists to travel. Once again, that's been a difficulty for the station, that they've not been able to have their usual support during this COVID time. For the local area, I think we obviously alluded to the fact that traditional beliefs are very strongly held in this area. We would love you to be praying against negative spiritual forces at work here, which do cause real spiritual and real physical harm. Pray that local believers would see clearly how to separate themselves from these beliefs and practices, and that the community would have a deeper understanding of what the gospel really means, and the change that should have on their lives.
COVID reached Chitokoloki, and it's caused a lot of disruption locally. Most of the time tests have been available, but there are periods where they haven't. We'd like you to pray that they are available so that risks can be appropriately mitigated. There is a lot of skepticism in Zambia, including at Chitokoloki, about COVID and about the usefulness of vaccines. We certainly feel that they're an important measure, and we would love to see people making use of them where they're available. It's been very disruptive and tiring for the team to be constantly having to change routines, organization. Pray for perseverance and wisdom in all of that. Thanks very much.